Hello, Scotty Reed here with a Black Talk Radio News commentary. On this particular commentary, we're going to take a look at the people activity area of politics and mainstream media. We're going to look at yellow journalism and propaganda in the mainstream press here in the United States, especially as it pertains to politics. So, first, let me go ahead and implore you to continue to support the media operations of Black Talk Media Project, which is a North Carolina based nonprofit. All donations are tax deductible. You can go to blacktalkradionetwork.com, one of the media projects that our nonprofit supports, and make a donation. Another way that you can help the nonprofit efforts of Black Talk Media Project, if you do not have a Cash App account, you can sign up for Cash App. Just go to blacktalkradionetwork.com. On any page, you will see the promo for you to join the mobile payment system Cash App on new accounts. If you set up a new account, they will deposit $5 into your account after your first Cash App, which has to be a minimum of $5. And why not join through the affiliate program under Black Talk Media Project? Sign up for Cash App, make your first donation, a $5 donation to the Black Talk Media Project's Cash App account. And then Cash App will give you $5, and then they will give Black Talk Media and a Black Talk Media Project an additional $5. So just one of the creative ways we are attempting to support our media operations, considering that there is not a lot of corporate support. Not that we want corporate support in running advertisement, because we may not agree with the product. So this is the way that we can fund our own media operations. So yellow journalism. What is yellow journalism? Well, yellow journalism is a term here in the United States for journalism associated with newspapers. I would also say associated with cable news that present little or no legitimate, well-researched news, while instead using eye-catching headlines for increased sales. Techniques may include exaggerations of news events, scandal mongering, and sensationalism. And I think that pretty much explains what we see here in the United States in terms of mainstream media. We also see a lot of propaganda in addition to those sensationalized headlines. And on this particular post in btrcommunity.com, which, by the way, is the social media platform that was set up by the Black Talk Media Project as another way for us to fund our media operations. Just $24 a year will get you a subscription to an ad-free social media platform. And hopefully you'll join and friend me on the network. BTR News with Scotty Reed is my handle on BTR Community. And this is where you will find this post and also supporting articles for this particular post. So I was on Twitter, and let me just scroll down a little bit. I was on Twitter and I came across this CNN excerpt from this person by the name of, I think their name is Jordan Clariton or Cheriton. I can't really see Cheriton, Jordan Cheriton. And this is where a surrogate for Bernie Sanders is being interviewed. But what I want you to pay attention to, because this is going to cover one of the propaganda techniques, or an example of one of the propaganda techniques that they use. Just pay attention. They're going to talk about a Washington Post ABC News poll where they have Trump running against, quote unquote, a socialist. Would you support Trump or a Democrat who you regard as a socialist? This is what's known as name calling propaganda, but let's go ahead and take a listen to this quick clip.
No, no, go ahead. We want to talk a little bit about that too, and we both have a few questions for you on. So we heard it was on this program yesterday that House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy said this is the new Democratic Socialist majority, which maybe you guys embraced, right, because of the position of Senator Sanders as a socialist. Is that helpful though to the Democratic Party overall? Do you guys think?
Well, so let me just say about Donald Trump, who's attacking in a very racist way four members.
Really just tight on time and asking you about
I just want to say, like, what he's doing is attacking them because their policies, which is free tuition at public colleges and universities, canceling student debt, Medicare for all. Instead of having that debate about policies, he wants to take it into a racist place. What I'm saying is those policies are quite popular, and instead of having that debate on policies, he's trying to elide that debate. We think that this is the popular approach to go. Americans support this across the board.
But the numbers don't support it, actually. I mean, there's an ABC News Washington Post poll that found that Trump would beat a candidate perceived as a socialist by 49% to 43%, whereas other candidates not perceived as socialists would beat him. So I'm just curious, are you convinced you have the public behind you?
Jim, there's a guy with the name Bernie Sanders. I hope you will take a look at Bernie Sanders against Donald Trump and look at those head-to-head numbers and then report back to me what you find, Jim, because I think you will find in the 25 of the last 25 polls, Bernie Sanders is beating Donald Trump head-to-head in every poll out there. Can you challenge me on that?
Well, I could challenge you on the position because we're talking about positions that are his signature issues, which don't have the backing of the majority of Democratic voters. And of course, those issues are going to be discussed,
absolutely. And what do you think, Jim, that most people know about Bernie Sanders? What do you think they know about him? He ran for president before, and head-to-head, in places like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, he's crushing Donald Trump. How do you explain that to me, Jim?
Well, listen, we'll let the voters decide. I'm just saying on the issues that you're making your signature issues, the polls show they don't back those particular issues. And as voters learn about those issues, that might be factored into their decision. We're going to keep up the conversation because we got a lot of time till November 2020.
Come back. Come back soon, okay?
Okay, we're going to stop it there. Again, this was a blatant example of propaganda and using logical fallacies as well. So the question that the Washington Post and ABC News posted for their poll was, who would you support, Trump or a Democrat you regard as a socialist? So nothing about policies, as the Mayo propagandist, CNN propagandist was trying to say, hey, there's no support for the policies and what have you. But the poll wasn't about the policies. The poll was the framing of the mainstream media saying, who would you support, Trump or a Democrat who you regard as a socialist? Hence, why they keep tagging Bernie Sanders with socialists. Now, Bernie Sanders has identified himself as a Democratic socialist, but his policies aren't really socialist. What he's engaged in is populism. So what is populism? Populism, let me just pull up my notes here. Populism is a political ideology. It refers to a range of political stances that emphasize the ideal of, quote, the people, and often juxtapose this group against, quote, the elite. So you hear Bernie Sanders, and over the past, I would say, 5-10 years maybe, we've seen a rise of populism. Matter of fact, that is why many people said that Donald Trump got elected over Hillary Clinton, because he had a populist message in addition to his racist white supremacist message as well. But Hillary Clinton was known as a centrist. She was not a progressive, is not a progressive. And Bernie Sanders had to move the whole party. By him running in 2016, he has moved the entire Democratic Party towards these popular positions. But again, we're focusing on propaganda. So, I did a video, just a short video documenting, and I came across on Google Newsfeed an article from the Wall Street Journal. And it listed, how when they list the candidate's name and then in parentheses, they will put their party and the state. So Bernie Sanders is a independent out of Vermont, but the Wall Street Journal, of course, put socialist Vermont, as if he's a member of the Socialist Party. So there is a deliberate effort to tie Bernie Sanders to the perceived negative image that most Americans have about socialism. Even though a lot of what some people call socialist programs, like Social Security, like Medicare, Medicaid, these are social programs. Doesn't necessarily make them socialist. But again, getting back to what he was saying, the propagandist, the male propagandist there, the poll question was, who would you support, Trump or a Democrat who you regard as a socialist? So this again is known as name calling propaganda. This is a type of propaganda. For an example, well, let me read the definition for you. Name calling ties a person or a cause to a largely perceived negative image. So socialism, communism, anything other than capitalism is perceived as negative in the United States because of the mainstream media and its role in creating perceptions and also engaging in disinformation. So socialists, back in the 60s, they was using communists. If you think about the McCarthy hearings and what have you, you had Martin Luther King, another person who supported popular programs like in his Poor People's campaign, was deemed a communist. Activists, anti-racist activists like Paul Robeson were deemed communists. A lot of different left-leaning people in the United States were branded as communists and then were disenfranchised based on that label. That's in the 1960s. Now, fast forwarded to 2019, today, the boogeyman is socialism. Socialists are the boogeyman. And so they're relying on the American public to have been propagandized to the point that they perceive anyone calling themselves a democratic socialist as a negative. So let me just give you the poll numbers from this Washington Post, ABC News, mainstream media poll. Trump, 49%. Okay, again, the question is, who would you support, Trump or a Democrat who you regard as socialist? And I'm like, why would you even frame a question that way unless you're engaged in yellow journalism and propaganda against Bernie Sanders? So it said Trump would 49% would support Trump over someone who they regarded as a socialist. 43% said that they would support the quote unquote socialist over Trump, and 8% gave no opinion at all because they probably thought it was a dumb question or they knew what they were, being suckered into. So anyway, what this is, again, is name calling. Name calling ties a person or a cause to a largely perceived negative image. Besides this real life example, another example would be in a campaign speech to a logging company, a congressman referred to his environmentally conscious opponent as a tree hugger. And then also logical fallacies as this guy was engaged in. This propagandist for CNN, the male one. This is a propaganda technique. Applying logic, one can usually draw a conclusion from one or more established premises. In the type of propaganda known as the logical fallacy, however, the premise may be accurate, but the conclusion is not. And that's a perfect example of what you just saw. Now, he cited this poll where the question was, who would you support, Trump or a Democratic socialist? Trump 49%, socialist 43%, no opinion 8%. But then later on in the interview, if you paid attention, he was saying, but wait a minute, there's no support for these policies, as this Sanders surrogate or campaign associate was saying. These programs are highly popular, and Trump is engaged in name calling and attacking these women because they are in the 4 women that he's attacking are what's known as the squad in the Congress, the Progressive Caucus. And so anyway, he goes on to say that, look, these women support these programs. Trump is engaged in name calling because he's against those type of programs that they support. And so he names off like Medicare for all and free college tuition, I think was mentioned. All of these are hugely popular according to polls. Now, again, you had to take polls with a grain of salt. It depends on who they called, the sample size, as well as the region that they called. Okay, and so you'll get a different answer. For example, let's say I did a poll in the Bronx, New York, and I asked a certain question and it was favorable in the Bronx. But then I asked the same question, let's say in what is it? Let's say Duluth, Alabama. I'm not even sure if that's a real place, but in the deep South. And I asked Republicans, well, I might get a different answer. Okay, and that poll will show different results. So we have to take polls with a grain of salt. But with that said, with that disclaimer stated, those programs that he said, well, the data, the evidence doesn't support that. Here we got this Washington Post ABC News poll that says Trump would be a socialist. Well, those aren't the programs. You didn't ask them if the poll did not ask them if they supported certain programs. And as you could see in this thread here on btrcommunity.com, those programs are highly, highly popular. So I posted a couple of articles. 70% Americans support Medicare for All proposal. But then there's another one where it took a poll and had several progressive policies such as higher minimum wage, free college, and a majority of Americans support that. Let me go ahead and pull that up. I want you to look at this graph. And this came out in 2019, back in March. Majority of Americans support progressive policies such as higher minimum wage and free college. So if we go down to this graph that they have posted, as you can see, there is majority support. Let me go ahead and read that out to you in case you can't see that. Let's see. Paid maternity leave. Over 80% of those polled support paid maternity leave. Government funding for childcare, 75%. Boosting minimum wage, 60%. Tuition-free state and public colleges, 57%. Medicare for all, 54%. And universal basic income does not have much popular support. It's down at 28%. So what you have is a propagandist on CNN making statements that have nothing to do with the poll question. Has nothing to do with the poll question. The poll question was simply, would you support Trump or Democratic Socialists? Didn't ask about those specific policies, which you see there is a majority of support. All right, so you had to be very careful of the propaganda in the yellow journalism of mainstream media. I make these videos because that's part of the mission of the Black Talk Media Project, is to inform and educate people about the propaganda they are subjected to. Now, let me just, before I close out, go back to this poll again. Now, you can't see it right now, but it said again, who would you support, Trump or a Democrat who you regard as a socialist? Trump, 49%, socialist, 43%. Now, let's break down those two. Now, I bet you if you was to do a breakdown of these respondents, that the 49% that said they would support Trump over Democratic Socialists were probably Republican to begin with. Suspected racist white supremacists. I would also argue that they are above the age of 50, above the age of 55, that this is the generation that was propagandized heavily against communism and socialism back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, what have you. And that the younger, the ones who said they would vote for a Democratic Socialist, will tend to be younger people, will tend to be independents, will tend to be Democrats. And I will say that the internet is the reason. See, the mainstream media, because of the internet, no longer has a monopoly on the people who seek out news and political information, searching for political news, I should say. So before we were limited to just 3 big networks, then came cable news, still run by the same corporations. But now, since the internet and the advent of social media platforms, now younger people can educate themselves and not allow their perceptions to be created by propagandists on these mainstream media networks, but instead let their opinions be based on the research, the independent research that they have. And of course, they have access to non-corporate views and opinions like you find on Black Talk Radio Network. All right, so again, please continue to support Black Talk Media Project. You can do that several ways. Make a tax-deductible donation via our PayPal account. You don't have to have a PayPal. You can still make a donation with a credit card or a debit card. Again, those are tax-deductible. You can also join BTR Community for just $24 a year, or you can also set up a new account with Cash App and make a $5 donation to the Black Talk Media Project through the Cash App. Cash App will give you $5 and give us an additional $5. These are just the creative ways that we are using to raise funds for our nonprofits and not having to rely on getting grants from organizations who might want to control us or running any type of advertisement. All right, with that said, peace and blessings to all. Y'all be safe out there.